Hello, I'd like to talk about Homeland Party's plans for a gradual or staged repatriation, what I would call unboiling the frog, because if we've come to accept mass immigration, invasion and multiculturalism by having it introduced to us gradually, bit by bit, like the frog getting boiled alive in the pot on the stove, just turning up the heat very gradually. You could say that Homeland Party's idea is to introduce the concept of remigration to us in the same way, doing the small, easy repatriations first, and then gradually increasing the public appetite, the public opinion in favour of it, so that we can then do the harder, bigger elements of repatriation. Unboiling the frog. The reason I'd like to talk about that is because I think it is necessary now to get strategy right. I admire the people who are in Homeland, the people I've seen. I especially admire Steve Laws. I think he's done some very brave work, standing for election, monitoring the rubber dinghy invasion, and he's been very helpful and kind to me. He's been very decent. We did a Twitter space a couple of months ago. I'll leave a link to that down below. You can look at that if you want to. But I wouldn't want to say anything to undermine their morale. I don't want to criticise them or attack them. But I think it is more important to get strategy right than to preserve people's morale. If getting strategy right dents people's morale, so be it. I don't like that. I don't want to do that. But I think that is worth doing, particularly now when we're out of power. We don't have anything to do now. There's no way we can get elected. We don't have any influence. So I think now is a good time to talk about it. The other reason I'd like to talk about it is because I was asked to by a pal of mine called Horace, and I'll show you the tweet just here. If I go back there. There, so sensible policies. What do you reckon, Gavin Bowlby? Thank you, Horace, very nice of you. And what he's referring to is that tweet from Northern Variant. It's pretty long. It's going to take me 10 minutes to read it out. I don't propose to read that out now. What I'm going to do instead is, what I've done is to pick out the bones and number them, and then to go through each one bit by bit. Now what he's saying here resembles pretty closely what Steve Laws is saying with his 7-point plan. So I'll go through Steve Laws' 7 stages because I think he's more succinct. It's a bit more, it's a bit tighter. So I will read out this one here though. And this is Steve Laws. That's from July, end of July. So I wouldn't expect the nation to fully support mass deportations overnight. It takes time. So it has to be done in stages. Stage 1 is easy. Deport all illegals in the system and close the border, legal and illegal. Remove all benefits for illegal immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, etc. Deport foreign criminals, stage 2. Stage 3, all who've entered illegally, regardless of when it was, return refugees. Stage 4, all immigrants on benefits and not working. Stage 5, any foreigner working against our interests. Stage 6, but can be done at any stage, voluntary repatriation with financial incentives in place to encourage them to leave. Stage 7, forced repatriation. Now, Northern Variant, I discussed Steve's 7-point plan there when we had the Twitter space. Northern Variant's tweet, that's what I want to talk about now. And I think he covers really pretty much all the same ground except for the 7th, number 7, that Steve Laws talks about there, forced repatriation. Okay, so that's Northern Variant's tweet there. Now, what I'd like to do is to see if my argument, the arguments that I've expressed to Steve Laws and elsewhere about state-based remigration, whether they stand up. So I'll just outline what they are, and I'll go through what Northern Variant has said and to see if I'm right or if he's right, just to see how it works out. Now, just to recap, my argument really it's threefold. The first one is that we're not going to vote our way out of this. We're not going to vote our way into mass remigration. We're going to collapse our way into mass remigration. And the reason is because we don't think of civilization as having a high enough value at the moment. What we value, what we vote for, what we want is primarily welfare and also management of the economy, but mainly welfare. That's what's important to us. And that's significant for 2 reasons. Firstly, It means that we are distracted from civilization. That's what welfare does. It's like sugar to take our mind off the main issue. It's a very good distractor. It's like a pacifier for a baby. That's what the state gives us, and we suck it down. We choke down the whole dummy and everything because we like it so much. I call it the welfare nose tube that goes up our nose, and instead of going into our stomach, it goes into our brain. If anyone pinches that tube, we're going to go nuts. I think that will happen when the state collapses. But for now, what we focus on is welfare, the welfare state. The second reason that's important is because welfarism is based on universalism, and that universalism goes hand in hand. The universalism of welfare goes hand in hand with the universalism of mass immigration, of multiculturalism, of asylum seeking, because the idea is that it doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, or how you've contributed to the predicament you're in. You are entitled to be fished out of it, to be saved, and to be cared for by the state. And similarly, that applies to mass immigration as well, and multiculturalism. It doesn't matter who you are, we're colourblind about that. So we are blind to your ethnicity about that. It doesn't matter what you've done, it doesn't matter what your group characteristics are, it doesn't matter what your effect on our society will be, you have the right to be taken care of. These sort of universal human rights, they're all part of the same stew. And so for as long as we're focused on welfare, I don't think we're going to vote for a nationalist remigrating government. I don't think it will come. And to remigrate the vast majority, I think it needs to be 99%, to remigrate the vast majority of 20 million foreigners in this country will require, at the very minimum, a huge landslide majority, a majority, I think, certainly a voting majority bigger than Starmer's. I would say a parliamentary majority bigger than his, because remigrating that number of people is tough. And also, you need to be able to have the physical and political and moral authority to be able to overcome the opposition of the foreigners themselves, but also the opposition of liberal whites who might say might simply go over to the other side, go over to the enemy, and so it's not just a question of getting someone in Parliament or getting voted into government. You have to get voted into government with a big, thumping great majority, and we are nowhere near that yet. At the last election, I think 4 months ago, Nigel Farage's party got 14% of votes cast. That's not 14% of the total eligible vote. It's not 14% of the population. That's 14% of votes cast on a small majority, on nonsense policies that didn't add up, with being against any talk about remigration, and with very much against any talk about demographics. Not worried about that, not concerned about that, doesn't care. And then there was this.
It is. We have a Muslim population in Britain growing by about 75% every 10 years. Right? That's just where we are. Mm-hmm. If we politically alienate the whole of Islam, we will lose. We'll lose.
So how does one include
We
them?
will lose. By 2050, goodness knows what kind of a terrible state we're going to be in.
There, so that's what you call being scared of Muslims, scared of Islam. We're going to lose if we don't keep them on side. Basically, I think that the logic of that is he will do anything to keep Muslims on side, because the only alternative is to lose. So and that, remember, that is the peak of national or conservative right-wing opinion in this country. So I don't think we're anywhere near getting a thumping great landslide nationalist majority with a huge, stone-crushing mandate for remigration. A very good illustration of this is a story from 3 years ago, 2021. If I show you this, now that is from The Guardian. That was, I think, May 14th. Yeah, 14th of May. Don't know who Libby Brooks is. I'm not going to read the article. That's a story. You see those fellas there in the high-vis vests and that white van? Those are immigration enforcement officials. They're going to one of those properties to get 2 illegal immigrants and to take them away, to get ready to repatriate them. And a spontaneous demonstration came, it seems, out of nowhere. Hundreds of people came up, that's what was reported, hundreds of people, it looks like hundreds of people to me, that was reported, that they came and protested, and they drove back that immigration van, and all those, you see that immigration van surrounded by all those immigration enforcement officers, it drove them all back. So it defeated that attempt to remigrate those 2 people. And the significance of that is that 6 weeks later, there was the Batley and Spen by-election, and that's on the Wikipedia page, elections 2021 Batley and Spen by-election. So if you look at the results there were, I think, 5 right-wing nationalist parties, and what they scored was, well, it was pathetic. Amory Waters got 97% of the, I've got nothing against Amory Waters, 97 votes. The Freedom Alliance, they got 100. The English Democrats got 200. UKIP got 151. I think all of them combined, they got fewer than 2% of the vote. By my calculation, more people came out to protest against the repatriation of 2 illegal immigrants in Glasgow for a flash demo without any notice, just a spontaneous demo. More people came out for that than came out to vote for right-wing or vaguely sort of nationalist parties in that by-election. It may have improved on Twitter and on other social media since then, but I don't think it has improved politically an awful lot since then, unless you count Nigel Farage and his 14% as a big improvement. My second objection is that these gradual methods aren't really as gradual as people sometimes say. What I have said is that I think, what I said to Steve Laws is that I think 80 to 90% of foreigners will have to be forcibly repatriated. They won't fit into any of the other categories, and they won't take money. We won't be able to afford to pay them to go. So it'll have to be compulsory forced repatriation of 80 to 90% of 20 million people. And thirdly, related to that, the point that I've made is that forced repatriation by the state is too brutal to work. You effectively have to go on if you want to do forced repatriation, you have to go on a manhunt for 20 million people in every building, every street, in every town. What you're doing is finding people, going through buildings, finding them. They might be hidden away, they might have weapons, then taking them into boats and onto planes, or rather taking them to, not directly onto boats and planes, but taking them to transport camps, and they'll have to be pretty big, capable of holding tens of thousands of people at any one time, holding them and then gradually sorting them into various different countries, different nationalities, then taking them down to into a van, down to the harbour or down to the airport, which is a very vulnerable means of transport, particularly aeroplanes. I would not like to be a pilot piloting a plane full of hostile foreigners who don't want to go back to their homeland. And then you have to persuade the home countries to take them. So those are my objections. I don't think it's possible for those reasons. What I want to do is to try and go through what Northern Variant has said to see if what I have said stacks up, or if my objections have any validity. I should say before that what my solution is, just in case it's said that I'm just knocking Homeland without having any solution. I think what we need are two things. Firstly, complete freedom of association, and particularly of non-association. The freedom to say, no, I don't want to associate with this person, I don't want to associate with these people, and to be able to gather with people we want to associate with, and as a group to be able to say, no, I want nothing to do with you or your group. And effectively to say, we, English or British people, we are banding together and we don't want anything to do with foreigners, and they can stew in their own juice on their own, in their own areas. And that's the first thing. The second thing I think we need is to be forced to rely upon ourselves for our own security and safety, i.e. with no state and no welfare. Because if we do that, I think we are going to let go of the sentimentalism, the sentimentality of universalist welfare and human rights entitlement, and then we will make sensible, hard-headed decisions. And we will be quite willing then to say, we, the British English, we're going to protect ourselves, we're going to entrust our security to each other. We don't want to associate with foreign people because we think it's bad for us. We don't think we can secure our safety that way. And I think those two things, freedom of non-association and being forced to rely upon ourselves for our own security, those I think will come about if and when the state collapses. And then I think that will separate out the populations hard. Foreigners will live in cut-off areas that are not able to come to us to make money, and the conditions in those areas will become unlivable fast. And then I think they'll be amenable to a free plane ticket home. That's why I think collapse is in fact the best option. Now, one weakness, or one big weakness in my argument is, and I think this is something that Steve Laws relies upon, is that the possibility that if we got a nationalist government elected with a big majority, foreigners in this country might go back quietly because they might realise, well, we're not wanted here, we're not welcome here, the game's up, there's no one living high on the hog, we've got to go. And they might then, or what that states is that they would then accept dire poverty. I mean, between 10 and 100 times poorer in the countries of origin, India, Pakistan, Somalia, Afghanistan. They would accept that level of poverty in return for feeling at home and welcome. I don't think they would do that simply because money will talk. If they did that, I think they would probably go to their own homelands within our homeland, i.e. retreat into their own enclaves and ghettos and kick out any white British people from there, saying, we're now at home here in your country. I don't think that they would meekly go back to their own countries. But, we'll see. Let me go through what Northern Variant has said, and we'll see if I'm right. Now, I should say a couple of facts we need to get out of the way. Firstly, there are about 15 million foreigners in England and Wales, according to the 2021 census. I think that's probably an underestimate. And in the 4 years or 4.5 years, 4 years since then, I think we're probably about 17 to 18 million now, plus about 1 million illegals. So already we're kind of getting close to 20 million. Okay. Also, according to that census, the UK is apparently 6.5% Muslim and 4.2% black. Again, I think that is a bit of an underestimate, but that's sort of a thumbnail guide, if you like. Okay, now the first point that Northern Variant made here in his, if I go here, in his tweet, he refers to removing foreign criminals and terror suspects. So let me go back here. Now, I think that's not a gradual approach. I think that is in fact taking perhaps the biggest number first, or a very big chunk of the foreigner population first. Not terror suspects. I would estimate that terror suspects over the years probably mount up to the thousands, maybe the low tens of thousands, somewhere I would say maybe between 10 and 20,000, or between 10 and 15,000 terror suspects we've racked up over the years, and that is a lot. That on its own should be enough to justify a wholesale policy of remigration of foreigners from our country. When you have that number of terrorism suspects that we've chalked up over the years, but it's only a drop in the ocean when it comes to the remigration total. So let's say there were 20,000. I doubt there are 20,000. If there were 20,000 terror suspects, that would be 0.1% of the total of foreigners in this country. So that's not a big dent. But foreign criminals, I think that might be. If by that you mean someone who is a foreigner and has a criminal record, and the reason I say that is because according to NACRO, I won't go to the webpage, but the National Association for the Care and Resettlement of Offenders, 18% of Brits have a criminal record. And so then the question is, how much more criminalised than average are foreigners? And I would initially have said that it's about 3 times as criminalised for Muslims and about 10 times for Afro-Caribbeans. But the data it's not as clear as that, by any means. I found that there are three sets of data. One deals with arrests, another one deals with imprisonment, and another one deals with prosecutions. So what I'd like to do is, if I can look first, if I go here, if I look at, that is, hold on, that's the wrong one. Okay, now that is from, that's arrest, that's government figures for, I don't, crime, justice and the law, I guess that's the Ministry of Justice or the Home Office, and it's looking at numbers of arrests. What you see for numbers of arrests is white British is 9.2 people were out of 1,000, out of every 1,000, so per capita, were arrested, white people were arrested between April 22 to March 23. So 9.2 people per 1,000 out of white people. If you look at Pakistanis, it's 11.3 per 1,000. I'm surprised it's as low as that. If you look at black people, it's 20.4. Bangladeshi is 6.7. Indian is 4.5. So what I'd say for Indian, Bangladeshi and Pakistani, it's probably averages out about the same as white British. And for black, it averages out about a bit over double what our rate is. Black, although I don't know what that is, that's a 52, that's about 5 or 6 times ours. I reckon that's an outlier. So, okay, so that's arrests. So that looks like, overall for foreigners, it's probably maybe a bit more, perhaps say 1.2, 1.3 times our 18% number. Okay, the next one is that's rates of imprisonment, and this is a bit of moaning and whining that came from this organisation. This is to a parliamentary committee, so committees, parliament. Now, Maslaha, I think they're an Islamic pressure group. Never heard of them. Don't know anything about them. Don't know. Don't care. Okay. And what they said, the evidence they came forward is, although Muslims communities, that word, roughly make up, let's see, about 5% of the general population in England and Wales, they make up 15% of the prison population. Now, I think the reason it might be so high is I speculate it's because Muslims tend to get into drug dealing, and drug dealing tends to attract prison sentences. So you might get arrested or prosecuted for other crimes and not go to prison, but for drug dealing, you will get prosecuted, you will go to prison. So that is 3 times the number. So that would suggest it's 3 times 18%, which is 3 times 18. That's about, about 54%. I doubt that it's 54% of Muslims having a criminal record, but it might be. And the third one is prosecution and convictions. I think that might be closer. This might be the closest number. And again, this comes from, oh dear, if I can go all the way up. Hold on, bear with me. That is stats on ethnicity in the criminal justice system. That's the Ministry of Justice. And then if I go down to defendants, and it goes down to prosecutions. There's a little table there, it's too small to read, too nerdy. But basically, the percentage numbers for prosecutions and convictions are the same for each ethnic group. So I'll read them out. It's 78% of prosecutions and convictions are for white people. So that's not just white British, that might include Polish and Romanians. So that's there isn't a figure for white British here. 10% were black, so that's probably twice, a bit over double the rate of prosecution and conviction for us. And 7% were Asian, so 6.5% of Britain is Asian, and 7% get prosecuted or convicted. So that it looks about the same. So, and 4% were of mixed ethnicity and 2% were of another ethnic group. Okay, so I should say that's for prosecution and conviction for what's called indictable offences. That's offences that can be tried in the Crown Court. So all offences apart from offences that can only be tried in the Magistrates' Court. So that suggests that the number is about the same as us, which is 18%. So if you look at that data, so that's the data for arrests, the data for imprisonment, and the data for prosecution and convictions, it suggests to me that probably that foreigners have a higher rate they're more likely to have a criminal record. I would say maybe 1.5, bit less, maybe 1.3, 1.4 times our rate. I suspect that's something about a quarter of foreigners, maybe between a quarter, 25 and 30% of foreigners have a criminal record. That's a rough stat. It might be a bit higher. It might be closer to that 30% mark. So let's, I'll be generous, I'll take the argument against me, that if that's 30%, so 30% of foreigners have a criminal record. I doubt it's that high, but let's say it is. That punches quite a hole in my argument. My argument was that 80 or 90% of foreigners would be left to the forced repatriation stage. But that's not the case if you can repatriate or remigrate 30% of them at an early stage on the basis that they have criminal records. Okay, my query about that is, if you set that as one of your early stage policies, you're going to find 30% of 20 million is about 6.5 million. So remigrating 6.5 million criminals or people with criminal records, that is difficult. They're the kind of people who will use weapons against you. They will hide. They will break the law in order to avoid getting repatriated. And also there's a question of, well, can you trace those people? I guess you can, because you've got a conviction against them, so you know their names. You should be able to match an address to the name and eventually to get them. But it might take a lot of hunting, a lot of searching. I think that's going to be a difficult job. So query if that can be achieved. But that is not 30% at stage 1 or stage 2. That is not gradual or staged repatriation. That is taking a big chunk right up front. Okay, and number 2 is illegal immigrants. That's the second point that Northern Variant makes. And my issue here, hold on, let me get rid of that. Well, let me go through the numbers. The numbers for illegal immigrants are, hold on, I need to go back here. About, according to Pew Research, if I can find them, hold on. Yes, that's Pew Research. Now they're considered to be the gold standard of research data. Query that. They seem to underestimate, I think, the numbers of foreigners and illegal immigrants into this country, and I think they underestimate the nature of the problem. What they say is an estimated 800,000 to 1.2 million unauthorised immigrants, so that's illegal immigrants and visa overstayers, were in the UK in 2017. So if I pull up that little graph there, it shows the numbers there. So 800,000 to 1.2 million, and that was 7 years ago. I think that would have got higher. I would guess that might be as much as between a quarter and 50% higher. I reckon it might be half as high again, which would mean it's somewhere between 1.2 and I would say it's probably about 1.4, 1.5, hovering about that number. But that is not 1.5 million. That is not a big dent. That's only 10, 15% of the total number that are going to have to be repatriated. So I don't think that really dents my argument that most of the people you repatriate are going to have to be repatriated by forced repatriation. You're not going to be able to get them on the softer method, saying these are illegal immigrants, we're entitled to get rid of them early. And I come back again to this story in The Guardian. That was only three and a bit years ago. That was where, well, repatriation, all those men in high-vis vests and that van, the crowds of local people prevented them remigrating 2 people. How much further on are we since then? Okay, so the next thing in Northern Variant's tweet is close down benefit and housing entitlement to foreigners. Well, query, I think we overestimate the number of foreigners who are in this country for welfare. I think most of them are in here to get work of some kind or another. And the ones who are dependent on welfare, I think they would rather get a job than leave, simply because what you can get paid here is so much more, 10, 20, 50, 100 times more than you can get paid back in your poverty-stricken hole in Pakistan or Somalia or Afghanistan or parts of India. And so I'm not sure how many people, I think it's impossible to quantify how many people that will get rid of. I don't think we'll get rid of very many. And the question is, you're going to deny these people welfare benefits. Are you still going to tax them? And what if people say, we're just going to stop paying taxes? Public finances are on a knife edge. If a large portion of those 20 million people say, no, we're not getting welfare benefits, we're not going to pay taxes, I think that's going to put public finances in one hell of a state. If you say, well, let's stop paying taxes, that makes them all criminals, that gives us the right to repatriate a lot of them. Well, again, you come back to the problem, how does the state, the meat-fisted state, repatriate 20 million people? How does it get the, how can it do perform such a delicate operation on such a large number of people? The next one is offer repatriation assistance. I don't know what that means. That could mean a free airplane ticket home. It could be a help getting a passport, getting in contact with relatives in your homeland. It could mean help filling out forms, or it could mean paying people to go. I just don't. What does that assistance mean? I doubt it means paying people to go. But again, it's impossible to quantify. I don't think foreigners are in this country because they're not getting enough help to go back to their homeland. So I doubt that's going to get rid of very many people. Now, number 5, creating a hostile environment for immigrants who are essentially squatters. Again, what does that involve? What does it mean? What effects will that have? I think if you create the hostile environment, you are likely to get, I don't think, just to repeat, I don't think that will cause foreigners to say, I want to go to a non-hostile environment in my homeland. I think they will say, I want to go to a non-hostile environment in your homeland by creating a purer enclave within your homeland of Britain. I think that's what they will do. They will retreat and try and feel at home in a place where they can make much more money than they can back home. I think that's what they'll do. Then the 6th point that I've outlined, that I've identified, is taxing remittances. Remittances that's money that foreigners send back home. And if I can just show you this, that is the Migration Observatory at Oxford University. I think they're the people who said that by 2026 ethnic British people would be a minority in our own homeland. And what that shows is that in 2018, the amount of remittances was 23.6 billion. So I think another 6 years since that, if you follow that curve upwards, that's probably nearer the 35 million mark. And it's very difficult to quantify what the effects of doing that will be. I suspect they'll just send less money home. That's my guess. But if they can't send any money home, that doesn't stop them enjoying the fact that they can make more money for themselves living in a nicer country, living here, than they can if they go back to their homelands. So I can't see that it has that big effect. I point that up because if foreigners are sending home about 35 million, that is about 1.75 thousand, about 1,750 pounds per person, man, woman and child, that they're sending back to their homeland. So that eats into any amount that should put in perspective plans for paid repatriation if they're already sending that amount of money home. Now, point number 7, that is, if I go here, that is banning foreigners from taking jobs in politics and government. Now, I think that will have very little effect. I think it's hugely overestimated what effect that will have, because jobs are by and large quite fungible. That means that they're interchangeable. So let's say you have a council worker and he's a foreigner, you fire him. That council needs to employ an ethnic Brit, and I'd have to offer him pay to tempt him away from his job, and so he goes and he takes the council job, and then the foreigner, he'll go, and that creates a vacancy. So the demand for employment will remain the same. So that will have the effect of reshuffling jobs and shuffling foreigners out of government into the private sector overall. I don't think it will cause I don't think it will force your foreign council officer to throw up his hands and go back to Bangladesh, go back to Pakistan. And then we will do everything possible to promote voluntary repatriation. I think that means money, and I think that is unlikely to work. I'll fire up this Wikipedia page, which I fired up before. That is, you can look at that for yourselves. I won't go into it in detail. That's the list of countries by GDP per capita. I can't find data for average earnings because the countries, Pakistan, India, Somalia, Afghanistan, all those countries, I can't find tables that include them because they're so low down, they're so far, they fall off the bottom of the table. But I suspect that, I think, although our average earnings are lower than GDP per capita, if they're lower for us, they're probably lower for them in their countries. And if you look at that, what you find is, I think the ratio between GDP per head, Britain and India is about 20. I think Britain and Pakistan is something like 35. From memory, I think Afghanistan is about 75, and Somalia is something like 100, or maybe I've got getting Afghanistan and Somalia mixed up there. But there's a huge differential, and I think that means that you just can't afford to pay people to go back, because what you have to do is to say, we will pay you a commuted sum equivalent to being able to earn, say, 35,000, or is it 39 average income in the UK, 35 or 39,000 pounds per year for the rest of your life. What's that worth to you? What would you take if I said you can never work again, you can never earn again? What sum of money would you take in return for that? I don't think it's going to be 10 or 15 grand. And point number 9 that I found is reform the care home sector and universities, thereby substantially reducing the number of visa overstayers. Now, visa overstayers, I don't think that is relevant to numbers of people who are already here. That's dealing with the illegal immigration situation. I think Northern Variant would like to believe that the problem is not with foreigners in our country, it's about illegal immigration, people who legally shouldn't be here. It's about tying up loose ends. I think it's a bit of a tidier upper, but you're not going to accomplish remigration by tidying up. So I don't think that's going to have a very big effect, or any effect at all on overall numbers here. Point number 10, invest in agribotics, that's farm robots, to reduce the need for seasonal workers. I think that might reduce the numbers slightly. I think that's a small, probably a tiny minority of people who are already in the country. I think what it would do is reduce the demand for foreign labourers to be imported in future. I don't think it will have a very big effect on current numbers. And then number 11, close down the dodgy car washes and vape shops. Yes, who would not agree with that? I suspect a lot of them are not about washing cars and are not about selling vapes. They're about money laundering. But those people are criminals. They'll find something else to do. I don't think they're going to leave. The pickings are far richer here. Even if they decide to go straight, which they won't, they can earn far more money than they can going home and being criminals at home, where they're actually dealt with much tougher in the jails. Now, before I sum up, I should say that there is a couple of things that he's left out. What he's left out is stage 7 from Steve Law's plan, and that is forced repatriation, where you get people who have the right to stay here. They don't come under any of the other categories. You simply go to them and you say, we are now telling you to go. Don't care what you say, you've got to go. We're going to force you to go, and you're not going to be. We're not going to pay you. You're just going to be packed onto a boat and shipped or flown back to your homeland. Again, I think that will turn out to be by far the biggest category. I previously said 80 to 90%. I could be wrong on that, given the size of the numbers of criminal foreigners. But I still think that will be the majority. And Northern Variant hasn't mentioned that. Steve Laws has. Another thing that Northern Variant said in that tweet is, we're not talking about targeting anyone by race. I need to point that out. That's wishful thinking. You can't remigrate without targeting people without focusing on race and ethnicity. If you are going to deport foreign criminals, well, you can't deport. If I commit a burglary, you can't deport me anywhere. Well, where can you deport me to? Because I've only got one homeland. I've only got one passport. So there's only one country you can deport me to, and that's here. So whereas a foreigner, you're basically saying, even if he's got citizenship in this country and you're going to deport him, you're doing it because of his origins, his ethnicity. So I need to point that out. That is wishful thinking. Okay, to sum up, I think that my main point still stands, with the possible exception of foreign criminals. If that's 25, maybe even as high as 30% of foreigners, then that is a big chunk, and that means it's not 80 or 90% of foreigners who will be left to the forced repatriation stage. It is roughly maybe 70 to 75% who are left to that stage. Because I don't think paid repatriation will work for the reasons I've given. And none of this negates my number one objection, which is I don't think we are going to vote for repatriation, remigration in big enough numbers. I don't see any prospect of that on the horizon. Even if there's a huge, spectacular terror attack tomorrow, I don't think we would change our minds enough to be able to accomplish this. I think the only way we will do that is if the state collapses and we then have the ability to associate and to reject anyone we want to, and we are forced to rely on ourselves for our own safety and security. Then I think we will wise up fast. I think we will make hard-headed decisions about society and about the civilization that we need in order to protect ourselves from crime, and in order to protect us, to safeguard our security. And so I think we have no option but to wait until things change fast. That's what happens in history. Things don't change, they don't change, they don't change, they don't change. And then suddenly they change fast. Things accelerate. You get feedback loops, and then things change fast. And I think that fast change will not come by voting. I think that will come by collapse. I think the Homeland Party are going to find this out the hard way, that there are not the votes there. It's that we are not going to vote in a nationalist party before collapse happens. And if I'm right in that, if Homeland Party find that out the right way, I think they will have to then resort to community building politics. We can't win by the ballot box for this Parliament. Nationalist right-wing politics, they're going to be taken up by Nigel Farage. That's what Mark Collett has said. He is right. I think he is right. And Farage is not going to accomplish anything, even if he gets elected. He could be elected Prime Minister. I think his only contribution will be to collapse the economy. I think he will put through stupid policies and break the economy. I think he will effectively be the Gorbachev of the UK. I don't think he will do anything about remigration. He's made it perfectly clear. He just doesn't want to do it. I think he'd rather not be Prime Minister than do it. He finds it too ugly and unpleasant. He doesn't want to get his hands dirty with that. So he won't do that. But that is what is going to dominate the political, or it's going to dominate electoral politics. And so I think Homeland are probably going to find that they need to resort to community building politics. And my advice to Homeland then would be to keep your options open and to keep open the option of coordinating with PA, Patriotic Alternative, over that community building work. I admire the community building work that Patriotic Alternative have done. I think they've made the right decision. I'm very much against trying to remigrate and repatriate through state action, state enforcement. I think that is liable to end up in massacre. I won't do that, and you shouldn't either. It won't work, it is cruel, and it will tar us for generations to come. I think that's all the state can achieve, because the state operates by coercion, constraint and violence, with a gun in one hand and a truncheon in the other. You can't repatriate 20 million people. I don't think you can do it. You can't stuff 20 million people into aeroplanes at the point of a truncheon or at the point of a gun. I just don't think it will work. And I, for very selfish reasons, not because I'm perfectly selfless, I will not take part in massacre, and query and ask yourselves whether you should as well. So that is why I think PA have done the right thing in moving away from electoral politics and focusing on community building. I think Homeland should keep their options open for doing that. I think they can work very well with that. They've got some very impressive people, very likeable people amongst them, it seems to me, and they could still have friendly competition with PA, and I think they would accomplish a lot more through community building than they will do through trying to get elected as a hardline remigrating nationalist government. This is no fault of theirs, but I don't think it will happen. If it does happen, I don't think it will work. Okay, thank you.